Ladies and gentlemen, good day. Your host, Charles Lugassi. We would like to welcome you to Radio Shalom. We want to thank, first of all, Robin Behar, retirement income consultant, that suggested to interview today. We are going to be interviewing a very interesting gentleman, Mr. Calvin Kalman. Good day, Mr. Kalman.
Good day to you.
Mr. Kalman, there are many things that we would like to talk about with you, but one thing that is of importance, I'm sure, to you, is your latest book, because you are a scientist, you are a professor at Concordia in physics, and you just wrote a book, the title of it being, How Did We All Begin? Where is God in All That? So let's go quickly on this book and what it contains and what is the purpose of the book, and then we will get to another aspect of your life, because I see that you have been a globetrotter. So let's see, first of all, about the book. How did you manage to conciliate both science, physics, and the belief in God? These must be a question that is asked quite often by students, and that is bothering every one of us, more or less, isn't it?
Yes, students who took this course, which was supposed to be about physics, but for non-science students, so my book has almost no mathematics, it's mostly concepts. They took this course which goes right through to the creation of the universe, because it's very close to what I did in physics, was high energy physics, and this goes right back to the beginning of creation. So I found the students in the course were concerned about God. I wasn't talking about God in the book, but for me, I'm a believing Jew. I keep kosher. All my trips, I always ate vegetarian or fish or something like that. But I do keep kosher. So I felt, when there was such a burning desire from students to know something about God, that I would include this in the book. So I would talk about all the background in physics necessary to discuss creation and origin of the universe, but I would also give my thoughts about God as well.
So how do you, in science, how do you explain the existence of God? Mainly for scientific people, it is somewhat difficult, because they believe in numbers, they believe in what they see, and God is an abstraction. So how did you manage to get to explain that?
I think the basic point is that you cannot prove that God exists. There's no such proof. But you cannot prove that God does not exist either. This is the point which I have really a problem with militant atheists like Dawkins, that they're trying to tell you it's silly for you to believe in God. But the fact is, you can't go and prove that God doesn't exist either. And if you are standing from a point of view of somebody who believes in God, then the world makes much more sense to you. You can come and tell me, oh, there were wars, there were different things. My first wife died at age 60, and you could say, well, that's terrible. How could that happen? How can these things happen? But, we had 40 very good years together, and we have children and other things. So, to just say, oh, this is terrible, that's not the way to look at the world.
And how did it came about to include God into your physics material? Because you were in this book, you wanted to show some physics. I can see in the notes here about you talking about the cosmos, about the galaxies, about all this, and you are trying to make us understand that all these galaxies and everything that we see and hear and whatnot follow a structure, follow something logical, right?
Right.
And based on that, it seems to you that it is so well organized and logical that there should be some sort of a strength behind all this.
Well, let's turn it the other way around, and let's say, okay, you're an atheist and you say God does not exist. So then you would have to say, how can this universe come about? Well, the answer that the atheists give is that, it's one of an infinite number of universes. Most of them, of course, are not like ours, and humankind couldn't exist. In fact, almost all of them. But this one happened to be okay. Now, this is a very peculiar construction to me, that you have an infinite number of universes and all kinds of things like that. It's possible, sure, but it's a very peculiar construction. I think, actually, a belief that God created the universe, that there's some power that's superior to us to create the universe, is a much simpler way of understanding than this other one.
Very well. So I see that not only you are a scientist, you are a believer, but plus you are a globetrotter, as I said at the beginning, in a sense that I see that you went all over the world. You've seen so many countries and you went to some remote places. What have you been doing in a place like Bangladesh or Calcutta, which is more so, Vietnam, Cairo, and whatnot? What brought you in all these places, and for what reason did you travel so much?
Well, part of it really had to do with my career. I mean, I was invited by the Canada-Vietnam Committee to go to Vietnam, and I taught there for 3 weeks, and then I toured the country. But as far as Bangladesh, let me say the but first. As far as going to Cairo, that was a choice. I mean, my first student, PhD student, was an Egyptian, so it was easy to do. But it was kind of interesting. A year after my first wife died, that I traveled from Israel, from Jerusalem, through the heights of Moab to Cairo. I was kind of reversing Moses and going to Egypt. So that, to me, was very interesting. And
when you got to Egypt, to Cairo, and so on, what did you see? What impressed you so much? You went to visit the Jewish places, synagogues, and whatnot?
Yes, unfortunately, there are not very many Jews who still live in Egypt.
No.
But there are some. When I was in Alexandria, at that time, there were still 10 Jews, and they were looking after this very quite vast complex in Alexandria, which was quite beautiful. But one thing is in Cairo, in Fustat. Fustat pre-existed Cairo, but it's now part of Cairo. This is the synagogue that Maimonides studied in, where he went to pray. It is the oldest synagogue in the world that is actually still functioning. It's quite a very beautiful synagogue. And also you have, interestingly enough, what was the main synagogue in Cairo, which is over 100 years old, was the Shar Shamayim synagogue. So we have a Shar Shamayim in Montreal, we have a Shar Shamayim there. And I brought back a kippah with me that said Shar Shamayim Cairo.
So you must, and besides that, so you went to Cairo, you went to, what did you do in Bangladesh? I see Bangladesh.
Yeah, well, Bangladesh, I think at the time I was the only Jewish person there.
Must have been.
They were well aware that I was Jewish, and they made sure that I had fish for food and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no problem of that. I went for a conference. They paid all my expenses to go there. But
did you feel insecure?
No.
Did you feel threatened in any ways? Or did you feel...
they knew I was Jewish, and there was no problem. In fact, I began my presentation, which had to do with teaching at the university level. I began it talking about two things. The first one, I had 2 slides, had to do with General Jacobs. General Jacobs liberated Bangladesh. Very interesting person. He was the number 2 person in the Indian Army at the time of the liberation, because he comes from the group of Jews who've been there 2,000 years. And he's presently the president of the synagogue in New Delhi. In fact, the previous year, I'd met him there, and I had my picture taken with him. But on the way into conquering Bangladesh, he led the army. And the story really is very reminiscent of what you would think a Jewish general would do. So he is called up by the chief of staff, who was the only person superior to the army, and he says, you should go back and take all the towns you've missed. So he talks to his own staff. He says, should I do that? No, let's go straight to Dhaka. So then he arrives at Dhaka, and he's 22 kilometers out, and he schedules a meeting with the Pakistani general. Okay, the Indian armed forces had superiority for the aircraft. They'd even strafed the Pakistani general's house and so on. But nonetheless, the Pakistani general had something like 22,000 troops, and General Jacobs only had about 8,000 troops. Nonetheless, he goes and has this meeting with the Pakistani general. So he says, I have in my hand a surrender document. I'm putting it on this coffee table. I expect that you're going to sign it. I'm going to come back in half an hour. So he goes for half an hour, and he's saying to himself, what am I doing? Am I crazy? He's got so many more troops than I do. What am I doing? I don't know. Comes back in. The document is still sitting on the table, unsigned. So he says to the general, he says, I see by the fact that you've left the document on the table that you're going to surrender. So I expect you to surrender in 2 days. The Pakistani general says, how could I do that? He says, no problem. You ask your chief of staff. He'll arrange it, and you'll do this on the cricket field. And they did indeed surrender in 2 days.
Well, impressive. What a story. And I have another trip of interest I can see is in Vietnam. In Vietnam, what did you want to do? What in Vietnam?
Well, as I was explaining before, I was actually teaching for 3 weeks at Tra Vinh University on behalf of the Canada Vietnam Committee, which was quite interesting. I had lectures every day over a 13-day period, except the weekends. But afterwards, we traveled throughout the country, which is a very beautiful country. I highly recommend it. The only place where there was really any significant amount of Jews was in Ho Chi Minh City, where they had a Chabad house.
Oh, very well.
So it's the only place where I ate meat for 6 weeks. And there I had Wiener Schnitzel.
If you had Mr. Calvin Kalman, PhD and physics teacher at Concordia, if you had a message to give today, to send today to your listeners, what would it be? Because you have a very nice and well experienced life. What would you say?
I think you have to live so every day counts. I think that's the main thing I learned after my first wife died, that you should not let any day go, because you never know what's going to happen. Every day is important. Every day should count. You should try and live life to the fullest.
Mr. Calvin Kalman, I would like to thank you very much for being here at Radio Shalom. Again, we would like to thank Robin Behar, retirement income consultant, for making this interview possible. Thank you very much. I am Charles Lugassi. Thank you, and all the best, Mr. Calvin Kalman. Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.